On to review of business regulatory support hub pilot service, review of progress. We've got Nick and we've got Lee Chance and George Denton as well in support, as I understand it. Right, so please fire away.
Thank you, Chair. So if I kick off, Lee Chance to my left is our Senior Manager for Food Safety and Licensing, but I think you all probably met Lee before. I'll provide a broad introduction if that assists the committee, but I'm sure on points of detail I'll be deferring to Lee on a regular basis. So the purpose of this report is to present a review. Some of these words will sound like déjà vu because they're both pilots being reviewed, aren't they? Yes. You see what we did there. So in terms of the purpose today, to present a review of the progress to date of the Business Regulatory Support Hub. That's a little bit of a mouthful, but we haven't found a single word to capture it. Following its introduction in January, in this case, 2022. Several things to say. So the Council's regulatory services, which are responsible for inspecting business compliance, advising, providing support and guidance, sometimes a little bit of coaching, but sometimes occasionally where it's needed, enforcement as well in a small minority of cases. That's a range of services we provide. The intention here, working closely with our economic growth colleagues so it's seamless, is to make sure that those businesses have strong, proactive and balanced support. So if there are things which, for example, a new startup business could do wrong, that undermines their compliance, puts them out on the wrong foot to start with, or costs them a significant amount of money. And typically, there's a number of thousands of pounds worth of spend that a business in a startup mode might spend unwisely if they don't have full sight of the regulations. So we do aim to make sure that we can support those businesses that we later have a regulatory relationship with. So the purpose of the pilot is to balance that up between support and advice to help them to get it right in the first place, and then to provide the regulatory service that we need. Clearly, regulatory services, that number one priority is to protect the public, but we want to make sure that we've supported businesses as best we possibly can do. Several other things just to say. The aims of the pilot are at paragraph 1.1 of the report, and I would just draw your attention to the last of those, which is point D. So one of the purposes of the Regulatory Support Hub is to provide a little bit of a shop window, if I can call it that, for enhanced compliance services, which we've brought to members and have been approved in the last 12 months, which would include business startup support and pre-inspection support. So where businesses want to avail themselves of something on a cost recovery basis, we can provide an additional support service to them. And the hub helps to facilitate some of that if businesses wish to avail themselves of it. Some do, some don't. The service transformation context is at paragraph 1.2 of the report. So this does demonstrate an element of service transformation in the regulatory services if the pilot is successful. There's some context provided in section 2, and we've got 9 success measures for you here in section 3 with which to have some fun with us during this morning. If I can draw your attention briefly to figure 1 in the appendix. Figure 1 in the appendix identified around the hub a range of council contact points that businesses might have, be they licensing, planning, commercial waste, business rates, economic development and growth and training. And although economic growth already has a role supporting businesses to link those all together, our regulatory services we identified in the pilot can probably do more to make sure that all, so for example, which of those services would a business first have contact with when it starts up? And how can we make sure they can have all of the information that would help them the first time they contact the council? So that's part of the reason for creating a hub. Finally then, the recommendations, Chair, of this paper, 8.1, is to receive the review of progress of the Business Regulatory Support Hub pilot and to make recommendations as appropriate. And to note that this matter will be brought back to committee once further information is available to evaluate the success of the pilot. And then 2, to note the proposed extension of the Business Regulation Support Hub pilot up to March 2024, subject, of course, to confirming temporary shared prosperity funding, or it may be other funding, to enable longer pilot delivery, testing and evaluation. The cost, just for information, of extending that would be around about £32,000, and officers are currently exploring where potential sources of funding. The words shared prosperity funding might seem stronger than they should be because we're exploring that range of potential places that we could extend the funding. The hub coordinator has moved on because they've been successful in a promotion and they've joined the permanent staffing of the council, partly based on the success in the first part of the pilot. So we wish our best to them. That means the hub coordinator role is vacant, and we're just exploring how we best fill that for the remainder of the pilot as it stands at the moment. And Chair, I should stop there.
Thank you, Nick. Either colleague wish to come in at this point, or just prepared to a cold springs on the questions? Right. Thank you. Ken, you first.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen. Fantastic report. Compliments to the department for the work that's ongoing. I noticed with a lot of it, it's about success in the 9 points of it. But in any successes, there is things that we're not doing particularly well. My question is to the team itself. Is there anything that we're not doing really well that you've identified? Do we need to do anything more work with it? And is there a cost for the ones that we're not doing too well? Because at the end of it, a pilot is the good and the bad. So I'm just wondering if we've got any, you know, I put the phrase bad, it's not necessarily that, but is there anything that we're not doing particularly well and would need extra funding? Thank you.
I think it's not a case of what we're doing bad, but more what we'd like to do next. And with the hiatus of the incumbent of the coordinator moving on, we've just had to put on hold the scalability of it, where we're looking to extend that to more communication and just more overt awareness raising of what this role can provide, just to encourage further startup, existing new businesses as well that might want to just tap into a knowledge base and really just take it on to that next level. It's been an organic growth so far. We've made sure that it doesn't try to run before it can walk, and it's in a really good, strong position at this moment in time. And even the handover, we've got a strong continuity ready to hit the ground running with the next person, all being well, that we recruit into this fixed term role. So that's really as bad as it gets, I think, from my point of view.
Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm struggling with the report, particularly in the conclusions, because I've looked at the measures for success and I've looked at the conclusions, and I don't actually see the hard data I would like to see in order to measure the success of this pilot. I recognise that you're going to bring more to us later on, but the conclusions, if I'm blunt, are a little bland. Don't give me hard data and don't give me the wherewithal to judge the success of the pilot so far.
So we identified a set of success criteria that would help to design the pilot. It took from January until May to launch fully the pilot service, because what was being done before then was to pull together all of the existing advice and information across the regulatory services, of which there's a fair bit of it, to create the hub design, if you like, and most painfully to get a phone number. Going back to phone numbers, that because the external provider took an awfully long time to be able to furnish us with a contact number, which is critical to be able to say to businesses, there's a number here and you can ring it between 9 and 5 for all of your answers. So I absolutely recognise and accept what's been said. We are still at a fairly early stage, and I think if I was offering you the review at 12 months rather than at sort of month 9, then, and that referred to data up to the end of August, then we'd be in a stronger position. So your point's a perfectly fair one. We expect to bring you harder data as we go through the pilot.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone else? Stuart, did you indicate?
No.
Chair.
Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to say I support this approach. Having started up small businesses in the past, anything that can smooth the way is really, really welcome at the beginning, and anything that can reduce costs and more especially the time you spend as a small entrepreneur trying to find answers. So I think this initiative is really welcome. Thanks.
If I could just elaborate on that. From a new business point of view, there's a requirement to register a food business. And whilst we've always strived to give really good advice to our startup businesses on the food side, the advantage of this is it's a core role that's dedicated to providing that advice, and it's not got that trade-off or aspect of the enforcement role of the EHOs. So this role can get in there faster all the time, more consistently than what we've been able to do with the operational services and giving advice, which is also on a more narrow band than what this role would, the hub coordinator role, is able to give as well. So it's got a twofold benefit.
Thank you. Grant?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm looking in success measure number 2, and I'm trying to, because this is all about giving advice and helping businesses when they're starting up. We are heading for I would like to use the word climate emergency. And I'm looking to see how we can measure success of advising and assisting businesses about getting ready for reducing carbon emissions. And I don't see that in this report, that is one of the things that we are really looking for as well, because we have, I don't know, maybe the government has set the targets, but we need to be helping or advising businesses on what they need to do, and also what the costs are that are involved in achieving that reduction in carbon emissions. So I'm just wondering about a success measure that incorporates this whole aspect of reducing carbon emissions and the climate emergency. Thank you.
Excellent question. Thank you. In response, I would say that we wouldn't have measures for this service in that regard, because this service will be about pointing those businesses in my direction, my team's direction. We've got our excellent Business Builder programme, which was approved by Council earlier this year, which is now launched. And that's about providing funding, advice and mentorship to businesses in Broadland. There's a decent sum of money set aside to support those businesses. And in the environmental impact assessment of that report, we are encouraging and supporting businesses to consider the green agenda in all of their planning and applications to that funding. This might include, but not limited to be, pollution prevention measures, reuse of materials rather than contribution to waste and landfill, zero waste to landfill targets, encouraging carpooling and cycling to work, etc., etc. There are a number of measures attached to that programme, which we can report on in the future, but it wouldn't, I don't think, be that helpful to attach measures to this particular role, because we're measuring that in other regards with the support they're providing directly to businesses. Thank you.
Jen?
Sorry, if I can just follow up on that. I wasn't going to say anything about that, but since Councillor Nurden has raised it, I'd just like to remind you that we did have a discussion around the Business Builder at the Economic Success Policy Panel, where I did raise this issue that, actually supporting new businesses in terms of energy efficiency, carbon emissions, was a really important aspect of sustaining businesses into the future. I'm afraid the response I got at the time was that, well, actually, we don't want to encumber small businesses with that kind of, I can't remember the exact words, but I think it's been re-emphasised here that we do need to include that as an important aspect of our support to businesses. I quite take the point that George has said about it doesn't necessarily come into this, but I think it does reiterate that under the Business Builder programme, this supports, as has been stated within the report here, that I think certainly given our ambition to support net zero, as has been stated, that we need to include that within the Business Builder programme, certainly. Thank you.
Chair, just to add in response more directly to the start of Councillor Noonan's question, Success Measure 2 was designed to be completed once we'd pulled together all of the advice and information existing within the regulatory services and reframe that at the disposal of businesses. So there's no numbers attached to it because it was a have we done, and we've completed the initial step of making sure that information's in one place. And part of the coordinator's role, as mentioned earlier, was to do a comprehensive job of making sure that that works and to test that with some businesses to check that that's a format that's helpful, not just suiting council officers or members, but suiting the businesses as well. So that's why there's no numbers attached to Success Measure number 2, which we would regard as completed for the initial phase of the pilot.
Thank you. Two questions. First one is the 3.4 Success Measure 6. Support's been given to 187 businesses across Broadland and South Norfolk. Do you have a split on that?
We do. May need a minute or two to find it for you.
Thank you. And just coming back on resources, if Phil wants to add anything on here, I can see that you're going to continue to look at what resources could be gained to support this. Have you got any more to add to that other than what's in the report in terms of where from, any ideas at the moment?
No, as has been indicated in the 7.4, then we're looking at the Shared Prosperity Fund. Certainly as we move into next year, George is looking at that with us. So at this point in time, no. So it sort of, again, reiterates what we were saying on the last report. We'll look for external funding for that rather than drawing on a base budget at this point in time, which, as far as we're concerned, it is external funding to try to enable this pilot to carry on.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, sorry.
I come back on your question. Of the 187, 61% were South Norfolk and 39% were Broadland. It included a mixture of businesses. People were talking about sort of general bricks and mortar of the units, mobile units, home caterers, food, beauty, wet sales, retail, as examples.
Chair, if I can assist, those numbers broadly equate to the proportions of our businesses that are located in Broadland and in South Norfolk.
Yeah, that's helpful as well. Just that sort of background information on there. And also what you just said, which is quite important, the nature of these startups. They look very much like one-person startups, possibly second person employed there from the little list that you just gave, mobile, food, etc. So on this kind of startup, getting this sort of information on regulatory is really important. You know, if you're starting up a larger business, perhaps employing, a dozen or more people, you have that within your gift to kind of have the resource to do it. So this is key. Most people would not have that, would they? All the time, actually. So, okie dokie. If there's no one else, shall we move on to recommendations? Jen, did you want to say something else there? Stuart.
I'll just say, just reiterate what you said. I think we've about got this right now. I think we were at a point. I happened to be subbing on overview and scrutiny before when this was initially adopted, and I think we've about got this right now because I think there's a reasonable degree of quality advice at first point of contact within a single space. I think historically this goes back to what was historically known as the Better Regulation Group, which means basically you can help businesses interpret regulations and get them at the blocks at an early stage with a good start, rather than having to move into a enforcement or regulatory environment. This is basically a help environment, which I think we've about got this right. I'll reiterate what Peter said. I think we need a bit more hard data, and I think it's been acknowledged we need a bit more hard data in relation to the number of businesses contacted, the requirements for information, the information provided, and the follow-ups. But I genuinely believe that's there, and I genuinely believe that's coming. And I think this is a good piece of work, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so moving to the, Jen, sorry, did you want, and Sue, did you want to?
Just a quick one in terms of the diagram at the end, actually. And I appreciate that on figure 1, which was page 35, and that's great to be able to see all the connectivity and so on, and interconnectivity of the various aspects. And I know it's not particularly regulatory here, but I mean, it follows on from what we were saying in terms of business interruptions, the energy crisis, climate impacts, and so on. Business continuity doesn't often feature, and perhaps it should do. I know, again, it's not so much regulatory, but it is, and perhaps an aspect of the Business Builder program as well, is to be able to plan for those kind of interruptions. And of course, this winter, we're talking about energy crisis and so on, and businesses being able to get through, those short-term crises and having some sort of business continuity plan. So business continuity doesn't feature there, but perhaps it could do. Thank you.
Chair, if I can assist, it would be very little difficulty to add business continuity as a stream of advice. There is good business continuity support offered by our emergency planning officers who deal with business continuity. So we've got good access to that sort of information. I imagine that we could readily source some information that has already been crafted and moulded to work with small businesses in particular, who would be at most risk from failures of business continuity. So we'll take an action away to have a look at that.
Okay, Sue, and
Thank
then
you,
I
Chair.
think we'll wrap up then.
Just a thought, in what format is this information provided? Looking under equality implications 6.3, and there aren't any, but surely the people that are setting up one-man businesses can come from all parts of society, and some of them, and perhaps a higher proportion of those people, might have learning difficulties or other disabilities which impact on their ability to take on board the information that you're providing. It depends on the format that you're providing it and whether all of those factors have been considered. Thank you.
Can I just come in there? The first point of contact is in first language English, but if we encounter issues, many of the operational teams have got translated material in other languages, so we would be able to then do the initial hub approach, but where it goes to the extent of the hub's knowledge, awareness, understanding, and ability to respond, then we lever in the back office specialist teams. So I'm sure that in George's area, there's information that's readily available that covers growth and aspects. There is the same on regulatory as well. So that's where we would lever in on a needs by need basis. We could maybe be a little bit more overt with saying where it's availability, but we would take that as a case by case basis already at this moment in time.
Sorry.
Hub approach is designed to be, we use a single word, friendly, so people contact businesses contact it, then they be minded to contact it again, so they don't want to see the interests of learning about regulation.
You might go.
Oh, sorry. So I'll start again.
So just that YouTube.
Thank
I'll
you.
pick it up.
Thank you. So the hub is designed to be a friendly contact point that businesses would use again. It's designed to have the time available to meet individualized needs.
Right.
So firstly, to identify what information that we hold would be useful. Secondly, is there information that we don't hold that would be useful, because that's where the enhancement and the added value comes from. If a business proprietor was to need large print, or they just simply wanted more time on the phone rather than written material, that's something that's in the design of the hub service already. So we would hope to cover all those things. One thing that strikes me, and my colleagues to my left might tell me we've done it already, is I don't know whether we've applied some sort of online gobbledygook test to see how readable the information is. Clearly, when it's compliance information, there's a limited amount that we can do, but it might be something that we come to just in terms of how simple and straightforward is the information. What I can tell you is that there's a lot of testing, of user testing, of how did that information work for you and how could we improve it. So that's inherent in the mode of delivery of the service. Thank you.
Okie dokie. So move to the recommendations. So we've got 8.1, 8.2. Under 8.1 again, as with the previous item, it makes sense for this to go to the work programme. Again, the same time period would make a lot of sense as well. So 12 months. So we could agree that, yes, agreed. Yeah. Okay, so under 8.2, just again trying to reflect the flavour of the discussion. It's got to note the proposed extension. Would we want to alter that to deleting note and putting to support the proposed extension? Would we agree with that? Yeah, okie dokie. So delete note and insert the word support. So with that amendment, which I think's been agreed, anyone disagree with that? Right, fine.
Probably just acknowledging that it says subject to confirmation of shared prosperity fund or other funding sources.
Yeah, you're right. We do need.
It's just a.
Yeah, no, you're right, Phil. I was going to pick up on this because
My
I did.
apologies.
No, don't apologise because you're right to. I might not have done, but it's on the because I asked that point, didn't I? And it's not clear. Yeah. So if we could add that in as well. So 8.1, 8.2 as amended. All those in favour?
That's unanimous. Yep.
Great, thank you, and thank you very much, officers, for all the work you're doing and presenting here today. And yes, thanks very much. You're very welcome, Phil. I know you enjoy being scrutinised, Phil. You always have done. Ah. Ah, right. Question.
I'll try to do the work and then do the questions at the end.
Yeah, because these something we do need because they've been sent out by.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I'll just run us through the work programme and what we've got planned, and then when we finish that, I'll pass to Rodney to go through the questions from the budget workshop you had last week, if that's okay. So if we go to page 36 of your agenda, that's the start of the work programme. Those two items you've just had in just now, and I will add to them for November 2023 for a review back by the committee. So that's 12 months after your initial review. So I will add that in for you. Coming up in January, we have 3 items in January. We've got the Community Safety, Police and Crime Plan, and we are expecting PCC to be in attendance for that. The Housing Allocation Policy Review will be brought in by Mike. And then we've got the budget meeting where we invite Cabinet to come in relation to the questions that we'll agree at the end of this work programme item. In April, you've got digital connectivity, better broadband for Norfolk update, and I believe we are still on track for having Steve from Norfolk County Council come and provide a presentation on that. There'll be your annual report as the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and then the Council Partnership Register review is due to come in April as well. Still got on there as and when the water supply management update. I do keep checking in with Joe and Ken. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add on that item whilst we're on it.
Yes, thank you, Emma. I have to say on that, I think looking at the budgets and the precepts that we actually pay, and Rodney will back me up with that, we pay nearly over £400,000 to both the Broads and Norfolk Rivers as precept. So it's a rather sizable amount we're paying, and they are anticipated from the last board meetings we have, that they're looking for a 10% increase in precepts, which is phenomenal, and it'll be 10% for 4 years because of the amount of work that's going to be done. So what I think is really what we should do is to call in the Chief Executive of Water Management Alliance at Kings Lane, Phil Camomile, very knowledgeable person. I think it would be ideal for make an invite to him to come and talk to ONS about why they're having to do that, and also the fact of the proposal of how the water supply with the proposed reservoir and the pipelines and that lot coming so that our residents know that they're going to have secure water in the future.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think, Ken, if we get some words together between us,
Yeah.
I can then send him a formal invite, and we just need to determine when. I don't know how quickly you want him to come in.
I think with the budgets coming up as well, and of course we've discussed their budgets, and we've got our budgets coming, and I've already talked to Rodney about this. The fact is, we really shouldn't possibly have him for the next meeting, because
So if I see if I can get him for the January
yeah,
meeting,
because then that will give Rodney a chance to talk with him as well, and for us to see where the proposals are, and exactly where we're going over the next 4 years. Thank you.
I'm happy. If everyone's happy, I'm happy to take that away as an action.
Would be, 10% every year for 4 years.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Just looking at the dates for the 4th of April, and the fact that we've got exactly a month later, we've got the elections and PERDA period, and is that not going to is any of those items going to impact in any way on the PERDA period? Because if decisions are made.
No. So I think. Oh, sorry. No. So pre-election period. I'm not allowed to call it PERDA anymore. Pre-election period. You can still carry on with normal business, and this is something that we've had on the work plan for a long time. So whilst that will be in the pre-election period, we are able to carry that forward. So that won't be an issue.
Sorry, can I just clarify why we can't call it PERDA? Is that wokeism, or is that
Our central government
ageism,
Councillor
or is
Nurdin,
that
no idea. We all know it as PERDA. We know what we mean, don't we? But yes, one of those edicts. Then we've got the peer.
Sorry. I'm just checking where it comes in the revenue budget, because under the revenue budget here, internal drainage board, we've got the precept, which is listed as 22-23 as 268,000.
Yeah, that's for one board. There's actually more than that, because it's the Broads and the Norfolk Rivers Road. Right?
Okay, so my question is, where does it come on the budget?
That figure you quoted there was correct. It is 268 for the three. I think your figure you quoted was slightly incorrect. You might have.
There's a big difference there. So I just wanted to clarify the figure. So it's 268,000 then. Yes, it is still big, and I support a presentation on it. Yes, certainly.
Accuracy is important.
Yeah. So 260k and 10% increase for the next 4 years, but you're still happy even with those figures for me to invite the chief exec in? Just double checking.
I think there's also the point about the reservoirs.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we do pass on to the residents, from the Water Management Alliance, because he represents all of the Broads in South Holland and that one. The people's perception of where's the water going to come from, or drinking water, and how are you going to manage that.
So if we scope that out for him, so we're really clear on what we want him to come in and talk to us about. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Yeah.
It's not quite the same emphasis, is it?
Yeah. Okay.
Are we on a separate, a different topic? I just wondered whether we should build in a review of how our move to the Horizon building has gone, because there may well be change of councillors in May, and if that's the case, perhaps it might be a good idea to review it with the councillors who have seen the journey.
So yeah. So it's when do you do the review? Because obviously we're aiming for early part of next year to be in, but until I've got the procurement through, well, not by we've, it's not just me. We've got the procurement through. Those dates for move-in will be. So I think probably what would be. I do agree. I think it's a good scrutiny topic to look at. I think we put it on as a to be confirmed date, but have it in there. So once we know what the dates look like and how that lands, then we can build that review in. I think that would be a good one to. Yeah, and I'll put it on the list. Absolutely. Yeah. Then we've got the peer review action plan. And I think, as I said, we'll have that member workshop and see what comes out of that. And then we can then look to finesse that for you as an overview and scrutiny committee to see how that works its way through. We've then got the task and finish group, and I've got a quick update from Mike Pursehouse for you because I know that's got a little bit stuck. So he has confirmed to me this morning that the proposal has been scoped out, but he apologises. He's also been off with COVID, so we've both been hit by COVID a little bit. He's better now as well, thankfully. When Martin's back from annual leave, we'll just work that through with him and then look to get the first meeting up in January. Mike's quite keen we do that early January because he thinks then also we'll start to see some of the cost of living stuff that we want to talk to with the housing providers about as well, so that we can start to have a proper discussion with them about how that progresses through. So I think the terms of reference are drafted and we'll look for an early January meeting of that task and finish group if everyone's. So I can see you looking puzzled, Holland.
To drop the terms of reference. I thought we'd agreed to do that in December.
Yes, I think so. Sorry, I've missed a loop. So it's drafted. We just need to talk it through with Martin. We can agree the scope in December, and then we can look at the first proper January meeting. I'm just going on what I've got in front of me. If you've got a different understanding, I can take that away.
We would have our first meeting and work on those terms of reference. So somewhere along the line, I'm hearing now that those terms of reference have been agreed.
No, I don't think that. No, sorry, they've not been agreed. They've been scoped, and we were going to talk them through with Martin as chair. I think I missed the bit of. I then need to convene you so you can all agree the terms of reference.
What we talked about, me, Martin, and Emma, at last meeting, after meeting, was about. I'm not
a chance to feedback, was that January was quite a long way off, and what we'd done previously on this issue was that we had a provisional meeting for the time tasked to agree terms of reference, also appoint its own chair, it's not automatically chair, I guess, and also just to set up parameters of what the officers know to and go and look for. So what are the parameters for that? Some of them was about what is the repair standard. This is an issue which hit main item on BBC and 10 o'clock news actually on how appalling this is getting. We're picking up as well. So what we was looking for, and Martin agreed with this as well, was to look for a meeting, a provision in December, just scope up and agree the chair and agree to the reference in December. Then pursue for exactly in January.
Yeah, okay, leave that with me. I'll pick that up and I'm just going to make sure that if you look on I have got the right councillors down, haven't I, for the panel. So I've got councillors Davis, Holland, Karina Gubanlu, Merrill and Riley. Yeah, okay, so keep an eye out for an invite for me and we'll set that up in December. Are we happy to do that on Teams? Because that's probably easier to navigate, or would you like that in person? It's up to you. I can make either work. It's just... Yeah. Okay, if we do Teams for the initial one and then we can then see how that goes if I get that set up. Okay, leave that with me. Then have we got anything else before we go to Rodney? Obviously then we had the workshop on the budget performance. So if there's nothing else on the work programme, then we can ask Rodney to go through the questions that were agreed at the meeting last week. Are we happy to progress to that?
Horizon building. And is there any anticipated date of when you possibly may be going in?
So the latest sorry. COVID cough needs to go away. I'm fed up already. Where we are with that is, so the procurement for the works on the building, so kind of looking at the bits and pieces we need to do, those tenders are due to go out in the next couple of weeks, which means we'll get the responses back from those end of December, early January. We're doing some soft market testing for one of a better web of suppliers, so we've got them warmed up and ready for those tender documents to go out, with the view to they're indicating they could come in the early year and do the work that we need. So we're hoping between January and March next year that work will be done and staff will be moved in over that period of time. That is kind of hot off the press. Debbie's just come back from leave, so is working that through, but that's the timeline that we're looking at the moment. So early part of next year is where we're at the moment. Once we get the procurement documents back, we'll have more definite dates. So we'll know this is when the work's being done, therefore this is what the move looks like. So once we've got that defined, then we'll communicate that out to you.
I am a bit disappointed with the Horizon building that we're not having a changing place facility put in, which I was told we would have one when we did the tour around. And I still think we should have a changing place facility put in that, because it is a public building, and under building regs we should have one as is a new public building. And I just want to make ONS aware of that. Thank you.
Point, particularly the point of view about this requirement, perhaps you pop that in an email through to the chief executive and also local officers to make that point, and it's up to them to actually confirm that or not formally, because it's very difficult for us here today in terms of on our agenda.
Send it to me and I'll get you a response. Send it to myself and Trevor and we will make sure that you get a response on that specific issue. Yeah.
Right.
So I was going to, yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. As members will be aware, we held an informal workshop last Tuesday, very much to give yourselves, as members of the Review and Scrutiny Committee, the opportunity to meet with lead officers and very much to discuss the Council's budgets, their priorities, any risks within the budgets, any opportunities, and various issues relating to the budgets, particularly for next year. Just very much remind us the reason we're doing this is very much to help scrutinise the budgets, to very much make sure that we can ask Cabinet appropriate questions to make sure that they are taking into account appropriate decisions and actually making valid assumptions when they set next year's budgets. So over the weekend, you were sent copies of the questions that have been drafted as a result of that meeting, and very much coming back to this meeting for you to say whether you believe that reflects the discussions at the meeting and whether you'd now like us to formally submit these questions to Cabinet to get responses on your behalf. So I don't know if you want to go through the questions.
Yes. I know you sent these to the others. Process-wise, we normally send to all committee, but I understand you're actually not just doing your role, but that was like a committee officer role as well. So appreciate that. Well, then Sue did forward through on them now. Usually we would have some committee officer comment, but shortly the staff at the moment send them through for all of us to have a check, and so we can clearly see them. So it's just that as well. So I think if you could read them out, that would be really helpful. So.
Just one other comment. It dawned on me, like late last night, that these papers that we were given at the meeting, anybody who wasn't there at the workshop wouldn't have seen these either. And I thought it might have been helpful, may still be helpful actually, to forward them to them. Do you think?
Sorry, they were on an email as well, though, Rodney, I think, weren't they? Did you not? I thought you.
So it's just that as well, because obviously it's very difficult. This committee, we don't know. There's some papers we didn't.
It's not criticism. I'm just saying it's
Yeah.
overlooked. That it's hard for people to look at these questions. These haven't seen these pictures.
Yeah.
I think very much we circulate these papers to help facilitate these discussions at the meeting, but obviously there's no reason why we can't share them. Just very much mention to members, they were draft figures and we are still going through the process. So please don't take them as gospel, as they will be the numbers that will come through when we do come to set the budgets next year. Draft, indeed, a big draft watermark on them.
It's really up there. I just lost their email. Stuart.
Chairman, I just wondered, when can we access a copy of those on that large scale paper? Which would be very useful.
It was at the workshop.
Well, if members want to stay afterwards, we can do a photocopy of the copies. Yes.
Good chap. Thank you. Right, okay. So Rodney, do you want to read them out, which may help as well?
Yeah, I can do if you say.
Yes, because not all members
Yes,
can
so-
actually see them. No, we've got to go through the questions now and ratify them for the minutes.
Do you want me to just get a load printed off really quickly for you? Would
Oh,
that
okay.
assist?
Yeah. Yes, yes.
Rodney,
Yes,
if
so-
you talk about them, I'll go and just quickly spin a load off.
Thanks, Em.
Right. So if we go through them, then the first question very much about the disposal of Thorpe Lodge, just about what assumptions have been made regarding that disposal and what would happen if actually the disposal doesn't achieve the value that's currently anticipated.
In actual fact, it's probably just taking 5 minutes while she prints them off, because it is very difficult otherwise. So thanks, Rodney. If you just hold on 5 minutes. Are you off, are you? Chance to escape, is it?
They decide not to dispose of and do alternative
Thank you.
change in use or something like that. So is this an opportunity to expand for those that weren't at that budget workshop meeting?
We have in the past, and I've gone back through over the years, going right way back 2013. We have amended but not changed. You can't change it, but you can amend it, add to in terms of a little bit more clarity, but not change it. So on one, just read that out and what your suggestion just gets added in at the end there.
Yeah, well, I was just saying that what if, or what would the impact be on the budget if a decision is made not to dispose of it, but rather to utilize it for some, for example, temporary accommodation or temporary housing or something like that, whatever. In other words, it's a disposal is delayed, or the value is not achieved, or the council decides to use it for an alternative purpose.
Do you think that's not covered in one? I'm just. Is it the same point? Okay.
Yeah, it's that first point, the question one.
No, I meant what you're saying now. Is that not covered in the first point? I think it is.
I think what the difficulty is, and like Councillor Nerd is the fact is, if we don't dispose of it, and then we decide as a council to actually make it for housing, or we keep the building and use it for rent it out for businesses and the rest of it, that doesn't cover that. So there must be budgetary implications of the fact that we haven't got it, because we're going to have to put more money into it to develop it. And I think that's where Councillor Nerd is going.
Yeah, what I was saying was that it talks about the disposal, and it could be delayed, or it could be we could dispose of it for less than value. But that's the disposal. I'm saying, what happens if we don't dispose? What is the impact on the budget?
So the question, I'll try to read it out, just to be absolutely clear here. So we've got, what budget assumptions have been made regarding disposal of Thorpe Lodge, ? And what would be the impact on the budget if disposal is delayed? I think that's what, and or the value achieved is less than anticipated. I think it's the same thing, Grant.
This is talking about the disposal. In other words, we're going to sell it. Okay, but now I'm saying,
We just, yes.
Or if not sold.
Or if not, yes.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
That's the bit we're trying to get it right. So that's or if not sold. Brilliant. Okie dokie. Right, agreed, yes. Just clear this so we can chunk through this, yes. Right, Sue.
Could I just ask a question? When we have the Appendix A, the proposed budget for 23-24, do we usually have a forward plan with that at this stage? Or when would we see the medium-term financial plan?
Well, you answered it.
Certainly, we haven't had it at this stage, but it's anticipated there'll be a report to Cabinet in January, or they might set out the medium-term financial position. Sometimes we do it earlier, but this year, as we don't really know the financial settlement until December, it's sensible to wait until we see that, because there could be some significant changes coming through. And if I was to report it now, it's quite likely that in 3-4 weeks' time, I could have to rip it up completely and start again. So we'll come back and do that in that January time.
And that's usually the case, actually. What the whole purpose of this is where are you on the current development plan? Where are you in terms of budgets for that? What do you think you need? Is that there in secure? I also know it's from the paperwork that I've kind of seen since, by the way, is that there's a potential funding gap of £1 million opening up. So therefore, again, you don't know exactly what the settlement is going to be. So it all gets affected by it. Okie dokie. So we've cleared one. So we're now on 2. So.
Yeah, my question really was about on this. We didn't have the funding bit on the bottom.
Right.
Is that precisely because you are uncertain about the context of how much we are?
That is why, but when we did the presentation to the informal cabinet, we did say that the funding assumption at the moment is that our total income from council tax, business rate and government grants will be at a similar level to what it is currently. But obviously that was caveated with, we really don't know for the next few weeks what it actually will be.
That's why they were on the bottom.
Correct.
So you've modelled on the assumption of what we had this year just gone.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, so the modelling assumption is done on that. Brilliant. Right, so we're on 2, Peter.
Rather than going laboriously through this, I wasn't at the meeting, so really I can't comment on what was said or what wasn't said, that we do have, as individuals or as groups, the opportunity to ask very specific questions when budgets are presented. I mean, I'm not quite sure what the value of this is, of going through every single item and saying, is that what we said? And because I don't know what you said, so I can't say yes or no. But there is the opportunity at a later date of asking very specific questions that are not in this list.
Well, we'll just go through the process. So process is at this point in time is from the workshop. You come up with these draft questions. Then here we endorse the questions, which get minuted formally at this meeting, which is because that's an informal workshop. These then written questions go to the admin and cabinet. They then write back. So the opportunity you're talking about isn't exactly what we're talking about now in terms of asking a future question. So it's at that point we have a further meeting. Then we say, is there a supplementary list? We're happy with that. And then we meet them in January. So if we can just quickly endorse, go through each one, and we can get there within sort of 15 minutes, I'm guessing, you know. So 2, shall I just read it out? Right. What are the costs, risks and opportunities arising from the council's decision on the 13th of October 22 to adopt an organisational 2030 target for achieving net zero carbon emissions question, and how have these been factored into 2023-24 budgets? Seems pretty straightforward question to me. Happy? Yes, brilliant. 3, council, excuse me. Council has seen a significant increase in homeless presentations and associated temporary accommodation costs. What assumptions are included in 2023-24 budget regarding these pressures? Question. And what actions are being taken to mitigate these pressures? Question. Relevant budgetary issue. Happy with that one? Yes. 4, the capital programme includes 7 million for investments in Broadland growth. How likely is this spend? Will nutrient neutrality affect this investment? Will the current economic climate affect this investment? What return is anticipated on this spend? If an investment is made in Broadland growth, how will the investment be overseen by members? Pretty straightforward, I think. Quite a good question. Yeah, Sue.
I'm sorry, people, but this is one of the things that I asked this question about is because it's quite clear we've got this £1 million potential budget deficit that's got to be put in from fund somewhere else. And it seemed to me that this may be a way of the council looking to make money in order to fulfil that budget deficit. So I guess there is a supplementary question that you might want to consider with this funding gap and the fact that we have already been told that we're going to have a council tax freeze. So if you're going to be using these sorts of programmes, how are we going to have a balanced budget going forward if these sorts of programmes don't make the money or returns that we're expecting? So it's an additional part to that question. It's sort of supplementary to that question. If we're looking to this to make extra money, how else?
So it's the what it. So if we're looking, so the supplementary is if we're looking at this to help plug the funding gap, what if that doesn't work? Yeah.
What would be the estimated return on capital employed?
That's in this question.
It is really good.
Okay, so happy with that? Yes. That's 4. 5, capital budgets tend to be fixed amounts for each year, i.e. 220k a year for the server and PC replacement programme. Should future years' budgets be increased to take account of future inflationary pressures? Oh, yes, we'll see in this. I think that's a fair question as well. We'll agree with that, yes. 6, first-class customer service is a key council priority. What changes are being made to the 2023-24 budgets to help improve our customer service?
I think you're getting that with your pilots.
Yeah, so we're aware of that, but bearing in mind this is a public exercise, So you ask the question, you get an answer, which is scrutiny for the public. 7, capital budgets include a provisional allowance for investment in a Taverham hub. What will this amount, will this amount be sufficient? I think it's about 1.5 million, something like that at the moment. Is it? Oh. And if successful,
The total value, yeah. That's,
so business code. And if successful, is there provision for expansion? Is there provision for expansion of this model?
Yeah, we can add that. We can add that.
Yeah,
To other
other locations. Yeah, it's clarify that. Great. 8. It's understood that we are still in discussions with the waste contractor on the true up provisions in the contract. What assumptions are being made regarding the waste contract costs in budget, and what risks are there if agreement is not reached prior to the budget being agreed? Yeah. Okie dokie. 9. The council is looking to upgrade the Frettenham depot. This is likely to include energy efficiency measures, which will benefit the contractor as they will benefit from the lower running costs. How will the council ensure that it receives the benefit from the lower running costs? Again, public question, makes some sense. Agreed, yes. 10. How will nutrient neutrality affect planning income? And what assumptions have been made in 2023-24 budget relating to this? Yeah, fair question. Okie dokie. Yes.
Sorry, just on the
Okey-doke.
back of current news, I suppose, which we will know by next week. But if finance to local authorities is reduced, we haven't considered that, but I guess we'll know by next week.
That's when they normally tell us. That'd be Christmas.
I was like,
Rodney.
if I can come in, I think that's a valid question, but it's not one that I picked up that was actually asked at the workshop. No.
And it's only really just come into the potential arena, hasn't it?
Okay, we could frame this back around, Rodney, with the modelling. And I think it's a question we normally ask. Actually, I think we've had a question we've asked every single time. I seem to remember this. If the assumptions on the modelling prove to be no, not optimistic. What are we looking for, Emma?
I think what you're asking is if the modelling, if we have modelled on certain assumptions and these are worse, what is the plan? Have we got a fallback?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think we've asked that every single time actually. Right, okie dokie. So that's 11, and I think that covers it. Yes, agreed. Right, so 15 minutes we got there. Thank you very much, everyone. Could I just also ask a question? I'm very stretched on staffing at the moment. Is there? Are you able to find us a full-time committee officer to service as we've previously had, Sue White and Sarah, etc.
You might have to put up with me for a little bit longer, Chairman.
Well, we'll put up with Emma for a bit longer. And I think we would all like to just register that we're very happy for James and that he's back to working at home, and it's pleasant to see James back and all well. So thanks. Happy, James, see you back, even though we're not seeing you at the moment. Okay, thanks very much. So Rodney, we need to have